my long-awaited poetry review has arrived. Okay, so maybe it's not long-awaited for anyone but myself. I've been very excited for this all month. I've just been like, I've got these poetry books, I'm gonna talk about them, it's gonna be great. As I said, if you watched my TBR, this is kind of counting as my books with the same title themed video for the month. Even though none of these have the same title, they're just the same concept because they're all poetry. But, you know, we can play with the rules. I'm the one making them. Anyways, I have 3 books to talk about today. It started out as 2, but then if you watched my book haul, you know I found a 3rd one. And so, here we are. And we're going to talk about some poetry. I'm super excited. Okay, so the 3 books that I have are Coming Into Land by Andrew Motion. And then we've got Helium by Rudy Francisco. And then finally we've got Unearthed Loved Poems by Youssef Fakhreddine. Not sure how to pronounce that. Probably should have looked up if I could find a way. Anywho, so kind of the premise for this idea was that I had seen this book recommended by another booktuber and wanted to read it and bought it for myself because it sounded good. Then I got asked if I could review this, so that's why I had the 2 for this month that I wanted to do. But then, as I said, I was book hauling at a secondhand bookstore and I found this one too. And I just love poetry and I want to talk about it. So, not that we're ranking this way necessarily. However, if we're playing like favorites and stuff, because people are probably curious, my favorite one of these 3 was Helium, which maybe you could actually guess by how many little tags I have in it of poems that I liked, because I was debating if I wanted to like read a poem out of each one for this video. And I will probably at least read one of the poems out of this that I really enjoyed. But yeah, this one was my favorite. This one is by a Black author and talks a bit about the Black experience and just kind of life stuff in general. And the language was just really beautiful and it felt really relatable to me, even as a not Black person. So I just really loved this one. It was a really fast, easy read and it was great. The next, I would probably say that Coming Into Land I liked the next best. This one is actually by a poet laureate of England, which is really cool, and I didn't know that when I picked it up. I just was in the poetry section at the secondhand bookstore and started skimming, and I liked what I read of this one, so I picked it up, and then I read on the back that he's the poet laureate, or was the poet laureate, however that works. And yeah, his were really pretty. The imagery in them was really nice. It took me a little longer to get through this one because some of the poems were a little longer than I normally like poetry to be. Several of them would be divided up into like big sections, kind of like if you can see there how it's got like the number 1 on it, they'd be broken up into like 5 of those kind of sections for multiples of them. So it took me a little longer because I was like, oh, I've got to find a time when I can sit down and read like the whole thing. But I really enjoyed the language and stuff. And then finally, not that I didn't enjoy this one, but this was probably of the 3 the one I liked the least. This mostly having to do with how this poem book was organized. So at the very beginning of it, we've got a little dedication. And in the dedication, he talks about, or at least I think it's a he, the author talks about how it's a collection of unsent love poems. So it's like an unrequited love. And these are all the poems that he wrote to the person he has that unrequited love for. And so they were not bad poems, but it just got to be a lot. When it's like that one theme for the entire book, it got a little tiring and exhausting for me. Versus like this one kind of touched on some similar themes because it talked about like breakups and things, but then a lot of the other poems would also be about other things. And so the fact that there were other topics made it easier for me to read and more enjoyable. And this one kind of did the same. This one actually had a lot of kind of like historically based or biography based poems, which is a new thing for me too. So it conceptually just sat better with me than having this one that was all of one theme. Not a bad theme, an interesting concept to be like, these are all the poems for this person that I loved and never got to express that love to. Great concept. It was just a lot for me in execution to read over and over and over. So let's hop into things a little bit too. As I said, I did kind of pick out poems because I think it'd be fun to at least read some favorite lines or full poems from the ones that I like the most. Or of the poems that I like the most. So let's start with Unearthed Love poems. The one I've got tagged is actually kind of out of the theme of the rest of it, which is probably why it stood out. So, this one is called The Fallen One. I would wash the feet of the fallen one before giving undeserving praise to the architect of it all, because even he, the fallen one, with his infinite deceit and pride, remains sincere in his ceaseless path of darkness. I would follow the sincere darkness over the deceitful light, stone angels with broken, injured wings looking down on passerby, mortals who are oblivious of their own rightful self-worth. This is the ancient house where great inspirations come to rest in peace after their creators have long vanished. So yeah, like I said, it's a good writing style. I like the poems and the concept behind them, but the unrequited love just got to be a bit much when it was essentially a whole book of it. But that was one that I really liked from it. And again, it was kind of off that theme and probably stood out because it didn't really address the theme that was in the rest of it. And so it helped it stand out and be more memorable for me. Next, let's read something from Coming Into Land. For this one, I don't think I'll read the whole poem because it was mostly just one little bit of line in this piece that got to me. So I'll show you what I mean. So this is the poem called Judgment, and you can see it starts out kind of in some double lines and then on to some more stanzas, and there's a little bit of a line break. So I want to read just those little like couplet sort of styled lines. They're not rhyming, but yeah. Anyways, I'm going to read that section of this poem because I really liked the imagery in it. I was raking leaves in the front bed when a helicopter whirred overhead, and I saw the blindness of a clear lake when a water bug paddles the far light. My happiness went. I had thought of death and everything that desecrates the earth. I had watched the blood of my children spill and the stones at my feet crack open. I had slithered so far into the underlying mud, I even flung out a hand for the hand of God. So, like I said, just the imagery that it evokes is really fun. My favorite part being I saw the blindness of a clear lake when a water bug paddles the far light. It's so interesting and evocative, and I love it. It was really fun to get just some really kind of unique imagery, and like I said, since it did some of like the biography and historical based poetry, not really things I'd read a lot of before, so it was fun all around. And then finally this one, which again I had a lot of options, but I think the one I want to do is called Mercy, and then it's subtitled After Nikki Giovanni. She asks me to kill the spider. Instead, I get the most peaceful weapons I can find. I take a cup and a napkin, I catch the spider, put it outside, and allow it to walk away. If I am ever caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, just being alive and not bothering anyone, I hope I am greeted with the same kind of mercy. Again, beautiful imagery. I love the idea of it, that it's like, here's this kind of everyday thing. People run into spiders in their houses, but then giving this nice kind of moral on it, that it's like, if this happened to me, I would want someone to show mercy to me. You know, so I'm gonna treat the spider with the mercy that I would want to receive. And I love it. It's so good. It's so good. So, highly recommend Helium. So good. But also really enjoyed Coming Into Land. And if you're in for some unrequited love, Unearthed Love poems was pretty fun too. So there's a quick little poetry review for you. If you happen to have read any of these and want to share your thoughts of like your favorite poems, or if you happen to not like them or something, feel free to share all that down below. I'd love to get poetry recommendations if you have any of those too. And I think that's all I've got for now. This is the Harper signing out.